Hello, everybody, and welcome to SDVoE Presents Face-to-Face AV with Justin Kennington. That's me, your host, and I'm joined today by Scott Tyner. Scott is a new friend. We've only just met. He is the Director of Client Services at Bates College. Scott, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Justin, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I'll tell these guys what we want to talk about today, which is InfoComm USA is coming up. And by the way, I've tried to tell myself to call it InfoComm USA because these days there's so many shows around the world. There's InfoComm Beijing we're also getting ready for. There's InfoComm, what do they call it? InfoComm Asia? InfoComm Southeast Asia? Anyway, the show in Bangkok they've got coming up in May or something. There's shows all over the world, so I try to call it InfoComm USA. But Scott, why don't you start us off telling us a little bit about yourself before we get into InfoComm itself. So what do you do in the AV industry?
Yeah, so I work at a private liberal arts college in Lewiston, Maine. I've been here for about 20 years. We've been doing classroom design, classroom installation, classroom support, presentation space, meeting space, digital signage. Like everybody else, we got into Zoom and the video conferencing world over the past several years. So lots of years in AV and in higher ed and promoting the technology that we use and the people that are my colleagues across the country in higher ed.
Okay. So you've been, it sounds like your whole career on the end user side of Pro AV. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I've been, and even before that, it was public schools, a few public schools. So it's been in the higher ed or education field my entire career. Here later in my career, at this point, I'm actually split somewhat between the IT and the AV. The AV teams are in the same group as me, but we also manage parts of the IT department here at Bates College.
We should have a whole conversation about that someday, right? I think I split my time with IT as a more and more common thing that we hear from us AV guys, isn't it?
It is. They are. I mean, there's the whole debate: is AV IT? I believe firmly that it is,
Sure.
and I think that we feed off of each other. And there are things that IT does really well that AV could learn from, and there's a lot of things that AV does really well that IT could learn from.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we are going to have you back. We're going to have that whole conversation. But let's turn to trade shows, right? We're going to publish this interview on Tuesday, I think the 4th of May, whatever that date is, early May, when people are hopefully making a decision about, should I travel to InfoComm USA in Orlando this year or not? How many times have you been to the show? Have you been a consistent visitor?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I was thinking about coming on here today, I started thinking, how many times have I been and when was my first show? It's really funny. I remember my first show because I actually went because UB Tech was side by side with InfoComm.
Okay.
And UB Tech was an educational focus show. David Pogue did a hilarious keynote address. And so I could look up on the internet to see what year that was. So 2011 was my first InfoComm that I ever went to. I think I've been to 5 InfoComms, 3 in Orlando and 2 in Vegas.
Okay.
Over the years. So I always enjoy going. It's always an amazing experience. And I think, as most things, every time I go, the show seems better. And I don't know if that partly because the show's probably improving, partly because I know a little bit more of what I'm doing.
Okay. Show getting better and you getting better. And maybe not, maybe a little bit because you're going to the show.
Yeah, I remember that first show, walking around the convention center and just being overwhelmed. The show floor, as you know, is really big. The booths are really big, and the first time you're there, you don't really know. You got the map, but you don't really know what your plan is. You don't know how to see all the booths. If you haven't set up meetings with different vendors and manufacturers. So since then, now when I go, I put out these messages to my manufacturer reps or the vendors. There's colleagues in higher ed that you get to meet. You realize that the educational programs are going on the entire time the show floor is going on. And so really understanding that and becoming better at attending a trade show has helped me.
Okay. Just yeah, the experience of being there and understanding how to game plan. I'm curious because this is I just sometimes I scribble questions down as I think of them. How much do you or how do you strike the balance between trying to set your schedule ahead of time, with your key manufacturers and reps that you want to see, with the educational content that you want to be a part of, versus I imagine you also find value in simply exploring, because there's stuff that you don't know about, you can't plan ahead. How do you seek to find a balance between that?
So I one of the things I think about for a trade show, and this is me talking, so but maybe everybody else will listen and say, "Oh, he's crazy." I don't. So we're a big restaurant house. We think that we do a lot of that work. I don't meet my rep
You'll get
at
over it.
InfoComm. I don't have to. Right. I see my rep all the time that I want to see my rep. I
Yeah.
email and talk with my rep. They come down and they show me new stuff. I So I do spend time walking around and paying attention to the little booths, the little things you might not know about. They also have more time for you.
Sure.
So yeah, I also believe very strongly, we can talk about this more, that the two things you really go to InfoComm for are education and networking. And in the higher ed world, we've gotten so good at networking over the past few years that there's probably 30, 40, 50 people that I know now that go to InfoComm that we can meet up with. Then we can talk about, hey, did you see this booth? Did you see that booth?
Yeah.
Go check this out. But you are right. You have to be careful not to overbook yourself. And you have to be careful because it seems like a long time, the 3 days you're there, but they go by in a hurry because the show floor is only open for 8 hours and you've got training you want to do.
Yeah.
So find a few vendors you want to meet with, really make sure you get your education lined up, and then give some time. I try to typically do it in the morning to get out on the show floor and go see some of those booths that you may not really know too much about. You're fresher. The people that are working there are fresher. When Wednesday afternoon at 3:00 probably you're not going to get the most energy out of some people then.
It depends. I've only ever experienced InfoComm from the manufacturer side, right? So I'm usually chained to some booth, and I'm fresh in the morning, and then in the afternoon, some guy like you comes by asking questions, and I'm like, I don't know, who cares? This is buttons and push it, whatever. No, but I'll say I get pretty punchy in the afternoon. So actually, if you want to have a good time, and I try to stay informative still, but if you want to have a good time, come see me at like 2:00 on Friday of the show, and we'll have a real. You'll have the most open discussion with me that you've ever had. Maybe a little too much, but it's fun.
I was going to say that's the best conversation right there.
You touched on some of these highlights already. I wanted to ask you specifically, as an end user, and specifically an educational end user, what are the things that you go to the show? The number. I was going to say, what's the number one? What's the number two? You said it's education, and it's networking.
And yeah, I think that those are the things and that's the thing I didn't know the first time I went, and maybe even the second time I went. Even if that means spending a little bit more money on I believe it's the Monday or the Super Tuesday type events that sometimes you have to spend a little bit more money on. It's worth doing.
You're talking about the pre-show educational. The
yes,
show floor opens
yeah,
Wednesdays, but Mondays and Tuesdays are a whole day of educational programming, right? That's what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, and some of those admittedly they cost more money. So pick a good one, but go sit in those sessions and learn from those sessions. And we'll talk in a minute maybe about how do you convince people to pay for these things, because people have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But to me, those are the things that you write down notes, you take down notes, and you bring it back to your team. You bring it back to the colleagues you work with, and you show them what you learned. So to me, education is number one, and it really ties with networking. And networking is funny, right? Because a lot of times people think about, oh, what does networking at InfoComm mean? Does it mean going to a party after and having some beers? And maybe that's part of it, but it's really about finding that connection that in a month or 2 months or a year you can reach out to and say, hey, Justin, you were saying you did such and such with your digital signage. Now we're finally getting around to that. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And those connections, and probably in the higher end, we call ourselves in-house integrator. That whole world might even be a little more important, because even though we are competitors in higher ed, we're extremely collaborative and work with each other constantly. So making those connections pays off for years to come.
That's something, what you just touched on is something I've run across before in doing this show, and I'm trying to remember who I was talking to. Maybe it was Joe Way, who I'm imagining you've networked with, because he's a HETMA guy. Those are the higher education end user group. But I was intrigued by what you just touched on at that time, which was, yeah, okay, in some sense, universities and colleges compete with one another, but it's not the kind of competition that, two businesses going after the same chunk of consumer dollars compete, where we have to, two businesses want to keep secrets from one another and want to, wall themselves off. And there's a very tricky balance these days in the way that businesses do try to cooperate while they're also competing. But I think that's just much less, cutthroat is putting way too strong a term to it, but much less competitive in the university space. I think you guys can just be friends and not worry about it and say, hey, here's a cool thing we did in our classrooms, check it out. And they can say, great, I'm gonna do that too, in a way that I think in commercial business is not as easy to do.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think part of that is because while we do compete, we all have our things that we're known for, the things that draw students. And I don't take anything away from our admissions and marketing team. Like, they have to get students, they have to go out and advertise. But within Maine, there's three well-known colleges, Bates, Bowdoin, and Colby, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're all top 25 liberal arts colleges, but every one of us is a little bit different. And so, yeah, we're competing for students, but we also really want the students to go to the school that's going to fit them best. And so right. The whole economics and business things of higher ed are really very interesting. But that allows us to cooperate. We do the same thing in IT as we do in AV. Just lots of conversations, lots of sharing. Because one of the things we all care about in higher ed is what's the best situation for students, and really how can we do it at the lowest cost, because we know the cost of higher ed is just enormous right now. And so if you're in higher ed, it's because you care about that. And so you want to do the best for it.
Wow. Okay. That makes sense. I imagine, you just referred to yourself as an in-house integrator.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you guys do a lot of your own work. Based on only that phrase is all I know, but it sounds like you probably do a lot of your own work. That said, I'm imagining there are times when you're still hiring outside integration firms, maybe design consultants. How do you feel about them attending InfoComm or not? Is that, I know, deciding who to do business with is much more complex than did you go to InfoComm this year? But is that a good thing? I'm sure it's not a bad thing. How do you feel about the people that you would hire attending InfoComm? Is it as important for them as for an end user?
I think it's probably more important, because a lot of higher ed, if you looked around, I don't have an official number, but I'm guessing anecdotally 60 to 70%, maybe more of us are what we call in-house integrators. We do it all ourselves. So when we go out and hire somebody, a designer, a consultant, an integrator, it's because we need them to know things we don't know. There's a real
special reason. Okay.
And if they're not going to InfoComm and really learning about all these new technologies, and they're not getting the training from the manufacturers, then there's not value in what they can bring us.
Makes sense. If they don't know at least what you know, then what are we doing here? I could do it.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's interesting. It depends on the school, right? So a big state school might be looking at an arena or an outside football field that they're looking to put audio and video in. Maybe their in-house integrators like, that's definitely out of our league. Let's hire somebody to come in.
Yeah.
Here at Bates, we're doing a whole new dance and theater interactive studio with the dots that they wear to get the images and stuff. We went and hired a designer to do that because they've done a few in Massachusetts, and it's just stuff we didn't know about. So again, they have to be at these shows. They have to be learning this stuff, and they can then come and teach us. The other big one that I've often argued for is we do have a local integrator and reseller that we use all the time. And they've done this for us. I want you to give me a 4-hour tour of the show floor.
Mm.
You know what we're buying. You know what we do. You show me what I need to see on that show floor.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to partner with somebody, to partner with higher ed.
Yeah, it's knowledge sharing, right? And like I said, first of all, your integrator needs to have more knowledge than you, otherwise there's no point in having this relationship. And that's a greght way for them to be able to share it with you. Excellent. So okay, so let's get into it now. I hope we've convinced enough of our audience that getting themselves to InfoComm will be a good idea for their knowledge, for their career, for whatever jobs they're trying to do in the next 12 months. How do they structure the argument if they have to go to their boss who's not sure and say, I really want to go to InfoComm, it's going to cost some money, but here's the value it's going to bring. What do they need to show? What do they need to say? Do you send people to InfoComm?
Yeah, no, we do. And so I've got a couple of people on my AV team. And so we get somebody to InfoComm. Of course, COVID messed that up some.
Yeah.
We've been getting people to InfoComm every other year or every year. Try not to send 2 people at one time if we can prevent it. So I think we've gotten a little bit better over the years. That I think that if you talked to most CIOs, for example, at schools, assuming that that's where the AV team reports to, they have heard of InfoComm at this point,
Okay.
which is a good start. When I started this in 2011, my CIO was, you want to go to what? I've never heard of this. Oh, and you want to go to Las Vegas to do this?
Is that like Computex?
So
I've heard of that.
it is. So I actually think Orlando is a little easier, particularly if you're on the East Coast. It's a little easier to make an argument to go, because as soon as you say Las Vegas, people start rolling their eyes. And so if you can go to Orlando as the first one, definitely do that. And make a plan. That's the other one that I really recommend is don't just say, I want to go to the trade show and walk around and see 100 booths for 5 days. And so talk about, okay, here's the educational sessions that I'm going to take. Here are the manufacturers that I'm specifically looking at. Here are the projects that we're doing in the next year or two that I need to get some more information on. And if you've developed any networking before going to InfoComm, talk about, here are the people that I know across the country that are going, that I want to meet up with and have conversations with. So you have to put that proposal forward. And then the big thing, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, is I think you also have to say, when I come back, I'd love half an hour with you to tell you all the things I've learned, to show you that I did what I said I was going to do, so that next year when you want to go to Vegas, they know that it's real. They know that you've had this experience, and they know that you brought value back.
Maybe explain it to the boss and also the broader team, right? Hopefully you learn some things that could benefit a larger group of people, and that would be the way to bring that value and spread it. The networking you did there, bring that back to networking in-house.
100%. And I think really good organizations do this. If I send somebody to any conference that I'm going to spend hundreds to a few $1,000s on, at least in my group, when you come back, you're giving a presentation to the entire group about what you learned, what new products you saw, connections you made, new networks that might be out there that you want people to get in on. You have to do that. You have to share it. And again, that kind of spreads the cost out, because more people are learning from that.
Do you think there's any difference how to make the case for your boss, depending on whether you're an end user, a consultant, an integrator? I don't see that there is, but I wonder if you see any subtleties that I don't.
I don't, and I can't really tell you how different, particularly the integrators or the resellers, decide who to send and not send. And I think a lot depends on the organization. Sure. I know some that I've talked to that the salespeople are like, oh, They send us every 5 or 6 years, but the higher ups go every year. And there's always this kind of, I don't really know why they go because they're really just doing accounting for the organization. So what are they doing at InfoComm?
They only go every other year for some reason, and when it's in Vegas, I don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand. So I don't think so. I think particularly integrators, they certainly need to network with different manufacturers and the like. And the more that different places grow, the house of worship or higher ed, um, networking with people, even if they're not from your geographic region, so you can just understand what other verticals are doing across the country. It all makes sense. And I'm a firm believer, especially after the pandemic, that happens best face to face.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, and I think the pandemic really showed us that. I remember, after I've been going to InfoComm since 2010, and at times feeling a little burned out about it, right? I mean, it's a lot of work on the manufacturer side. And I'll say that taking those couple of years off from it and coming back to it, like I was re-energized and able to see the value, in a way that I'd lost or maybe that I hadn't seen before. Because just being there with people, it there's an excitement to it, right? It reminds us why, why we do all this nerdy stuff in the first place. Because it's cool.
100%. And I think I've seen that. I was paying a lot of attention to ISC and the people that are at ISC. And that's really the feel. I wasn't there this year, but in social media and I got a lot of the sense that people really enjoyed being back together, and that this was really kind of the one that was getting almost back to pre-pandemic times. And the networking was happening and the connections were happening, and there was just a lot of energy.
I was there and there last year in May 22 and totally agree with that. May 22, it was like the first real, we're kind of back to this experience, and it had that, that feeling of, wow, like there's people with faces and it's cool to see them again. This year was like, wow, it really feels like back to normal, back to business, in a very positive, we're excited to do this again way. So that's why we're so excited about InfoComm. One last question I have for you is I'm being selfish here. As a manufacturer, what would you say, is the way to make sure that a manufacturer is providing value to you, to the person who shows up at the booth with a scheduled meeting or just walks in? What should we be focused on?
Well, and some of this you probably already do, but to me, you should, if it's scheduled, you should know who I am. You should know what my needs are. You hopefully have talked to my reseller, so you might get a sense of the projects that we're working on. I think one of the things, at least I hope one of the things that we're getting away from in the show floors, I walk into a manufacturer's booth and they walk around and show me 50 black boxes.
And this one has 6 holes in it, and this one has 12 holes in it. Here's one with 3 holes. And this one's wireless. It has no holes at all.
Exactly. and oh, by the way, there's actually nothing in any of these black boxes because they're all vaporware. So for me, the other one is I'm hoping the trade shows get to this point of just really hands-on. Even if you have 100 products, show me, let me touch and use the newest ones, or that have the newest capabilities or the newest tools. So I can get something that I cannot get in a PDF that you're going to send.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So all you manufacturers watching, pay attention. Hands-on, that's the trick. Cool. Well, Scott, I think let's wrap it there. I think I'm convinced. I'm certainly going. I actually was getting ready to book a plane ticket this afternoon. So you've convinced me. Now I'm definitely going to.
Great. I guess that's the other cool thing about when this comes out, and my experience with InfoComm in general is you still have time. You can still make those last minute decisions and get there and get a hotel. So it's not too late.
Well, that's the thing about Orlando and Las Vegas, right? I mean, you can bring a big convention center to town. They're not going to run out of hotel rooms. They're not going to.
They are not.
That's great. So InfoComm, if I have it right, is this year June 11th through 15th. And Brooke, you'll subtitle the correct thing if I got that wrong. Thank you, Brooke. And SDVoE, of course, will be there. We'll be putting on our SDVoE Academy stage, which means we will be producing 15 to 20 minute, totally free educational seminars every half hour for practically the whole show. So stop by our website. We'll soon have a schedule posted, or just stop by the booth. Scott, now I'm expecting you to come by for some networking. I can't wait to see you there.
Okay, we'll do it. We'll meet in person.
And I think that's all we have for today. So thanks for joining us, Scott, and thank you for watching.